I'm disturbed that we are creating a system, kind of like what happened with HMOs, where we get a lot of administrators and a centralized bureaucracy trying to tell teachers how to teach students. No Child Left Behind represents the greatest expansion of the federal government than at any time since the Great Society. And it takes a one-shot approach to what we do with our education system. We do a test. That's certainly the first step. We spent over $25 million on a test. We delivered it last spring. And then what does the Department of Education do but send a letter to each superintendent saying, please keep it secret till after the election. The school system in Minneapolis revealed theirs today, said, geez, we're below average. Well, most of them are, because it's a new test. Now, it doesn't mean that the kids failed, although 70% of 11th graders failed in math. It doesn't mean that they failed, though. It could be that the test doesn't work. It could be that the test needs to be calibrated. It could be that the test just needs to have a benchmark. But why do we keep coming up with all of these different types of tests? My oldest daughter took the bar exam, and she had a cram course. They said, you will know more about the law than any time when you take that bar exam, and within 2 weeks you'll forget it, because we're not here to teach you about the law, we're here to teach you how to take a test. And guess what's going on in our schools? A lot of teaching to the test, and that's not good. You want to teach these kids how to learn. They don't need more of Washington, they don't need more of St. Paul. Not in terms of more accountability, especially when the test isn't accountable, we keep it secret.
Thank you, Mr. Valenti.
Well, this is another area of difference, just respectful difference. The Attorney General has spoken about concerns and opposition to standardized testing. If we were in a room like this 20 years ago and somebody like me was proposing that, and the education establishment would call you a heretic. They would say it's an art, it's not a science, trust us, it'll all work out. We now know we can measure student achievement. We need to keep the main thing the main thing. And student learning is the main thing in education. And we can now measure that with great precision. We can track children by how much they're learning, what they're learning, how fast they're learning. We want to make sure that we have tools for accountability. What gets measured gets done. What gets paid for gets done. And this rejection of accountability measures is very concerning to me. That is not the direction we want to head. In terms of what we've done in Minnesota, we had some pretty mediocre school standards called the Profile of Learning. We threw them out and got some better ones. We had a abysmally low rigor graduation test. We threw that out and got some tougher ones. We are now leading the nation again in school reform through initiatives like performance pay for teaching rather than seniority pay. We're overhauling and reinventing the American high school, the Minnesota high school, by getting more college preparatory classes and college readiness classes and credit earning classes and AP classes and IB classes in the classroom in high school. We're getting more online learning and aligning resources and curriculum to that. We've started a new higher education institution in Rochester to strategically meet the needs of that community and region and the state more broadly. We've created and pressured MnSCU to have a centers of excellence approach or incentivize them so all campuses don't try to be all things to everybody, everywhere, in a world of needing for strategic focus. We've got the University of Minnesota doing the same thing. Tuition levels went up too high, but they're returning to normal. The university has proposed a 4% tuition increase for the next year. MnSCU is going to do about the same. We're about middle of the pack in the Big Ten for tuition levels, and MnSCU too. We got more to do in that regard, but with the budget crisis subsided now, those levels are returning to historic pattern.
Thank you, Mr. Hutchins.
So how do we get better education outcomes in Minnesota? We've got to focus on both ends of the continuum. First, we absolutely have to invest in early childhood education. I mean, really invest. There's been so much work done on this in this city, Art Rolnick and others, and we know what to do. We just haven't found the will to do it. We got to get that done. It's going to cost us about $100 million a year. Then we got to see to it we have all-day, everyday kindergarten for every child. The impact of this, of both of these two things together on student achievement is almost unbelievable, and that's about $150 million a year to get that done. The other end of the spectrum, we got to focus on what happens to the kids who do graduate from high school. We have a terrific graduation rate, but when our kids that are holding a high school diploma show up in our state colleges, 36% of the time they've got to take remedial courses. They've got to take high school courses over again. Of course, the difference is now it's on their time and their dime. Well, as well as our dime. It costs about $40 million a year in tuition plus state tax subsidies to reteach what our kids should have learned in high school. We got to get those graduations. They may be new standards, but we got to get them up to the point where these standards and our admission standards are the same. Why wouldn't they be? And so a high school diploma ought to be your ticket to admission to one of our MnSCU schools. And That's what we've proposed. You get a diploma with standards that match, guaranteed admission. And then you got to double financial aid. You got to make it more possible for more kids. That costs another $150 million. Now boy, before everybody up here freaks out and says, oh man, this is the biggest tax increase in the history of the universe. No. The other side of the equation, DJ, back to where you started, is healthcare costs. Healthcare costs are the things that are driving tuition up. They're driving the costs up in education. They're driving all the costs up. And we put out there, unlike our friends up here, a real plan for how you could get control of healthcare costs so you could have the money you need to invest in our schools and get the college graduates that we need and prepare our kids adequately.
Thank you. Mr. Hatch.
Well, I'm not against measurable student achievement. I think that's important. What I am against is this endless lurching of the education system. Every time we get a new governor or a new president, we have all sorts of new plans, all this administrative costs put together, new tests put together, profiles in learning, now No Child Left Behind. Lots of money being spent at the centralized basis, lots of requirements being imposed on others. Look at this morning, these test results come out, everybody panics on it, and they talk about how the costs for the Minneapolis school system will have to change. Yet we don't know what happened at the statewide level right here in terms of how did other school districts occur? Was this test accurate? Can it fairly evaluate? The assumption is, frankly, from the people I'm hearing, is that it can't fairly evaluate at this stage and people shouldn't overreact to it. But I don't know, because the accountability system that's been put in place isn't accountable. And there's some irony there, I suspect. Number two is we have to take a look at property taxation as the basis of our education system. Right now we're pitting the Minnesota Constitution. Our forefathers said that there shall be a uniform education system. Every child shall have a quality education system. Property taxes don't do it.
Thank you. Plenty.
Just to continue on, Minnesota has, amongst other measures of nation-leading status, the highest rate of gain, or the most gain, I should say, under the No Child Left Behind Act of any state in the nation. And so with these standardized measures are able to compare us not just to the nation, but now we're going to be able to do it to the world. We got through the legislature a TIN study, which is going to tell us how we're compared to the rest of the world on a standardized basis. That's very important from a global competitiveness perspective. I also want to tell you, though, that the averages lie. It's the progress that we see is really uneven, and it's particularly uneven for children of color and children who live in concentrations of socioeconomic disadvantage. And these numbers haven't changed significantly in a long time. And to answer DJ Tice's question directly, nobody should be able to force you to go to a bad school. If the school and its stakeholders can't improve it and offer results that are consistent with the rest of the state, nobody should force you to be able to go to a bad school. I'd love to talk more about that, but we're out of time.
Thank you, Mr. Hutchinson.
Kind of to recap, the governor says we measure growth. We don't actually measure student growth. We could. We've got the tools to do it, but we're not doing it. And student growth is really the thing parents care the most about. We're proposing to actually get that done. I can't duck the real problem here. The real problem is that at the end of the day, too many of our youngsters are getting diplomas that don't mean what the diploma says. We've got to fix that. If we're not willing to face that problem, all the SAT scores, the ACT scores in the world won't make us look better. But I'm shocked once again. Tim Pawlenty has spent at least $500,000 on a TV ad to tell us that the major reform in education in Minnesota is to drive those the spending in the classroom all the way up from an average of 69% to 70%. We want to. This is the nation-leading proposal to change education in our state. And I just got to say for the record, that doesn't cut it. That won't make it. It's not what our kids need.